organize another one, raising awareness, organized also along or after the initiative of 2 students of this faculty, designing diversity or dissecting diversity in design. Again, the word diversity appears there. Finally, last semester in the spring, we celebrated this other one in collaboration with Roberto and Caroline. It's a little bit the same format, not the content that we are going to be following today. It was called, Is This True? Democracy, Autocracy, and Truth Forming, and what architectures got to do with it. Maybe the subtitle is a little bit long, but really interesting. So along those lines, I kept wondering today, what is it should I start with about? No? When we have been talking about diversity and perspectives today, about other ways of designing. No? And at the same time, when we are all doing this, these 2 years, we have, I don't know, making these efforts at the faculty of organizing or, let's say, putting together a group that is called Diversity Group. These people are around us, no? And these people seem to be having lot more success in our cities, in our societies, and they keep being voted, no? And one of the things that I have the impression, if they are telling us that there's a perspective, their perspective about the futures of our societies, which I would say, to say the least, is kind of a very narrow perspective. So as much as we want here at the university or at the faculty, when we educate, to open up to other perspectives, and this is what we are going to try to do today, we are confronted with a sort of I would say, tsunami, no, of all these people surrounded by flags. By the way, this is the only guy in Sweden which doesn't use the flag. He has, let's say, sort of disguised the flag with a flower, which is also a really interesting image, because what you actually start thinking is that they want to seem friendly. I wonder what how friendly their perspectives are actually, and how narrow-minded many of their perspectives that they are talking, that they are presenting when it comes to immigration or any kind of diversity, of inclusion of others, etc., which are topics we are looking at today. I wonder to what extent do they even care, no? So anyway, they are all there and they are getting power, and I think this is a really worrying issue while we talk here within the faculty about, let's say, the other side of the spectrum, no? At the same time, some of them outside the European Union are starting attacking us or throwing us immigrants as they wish, or throwing us all their products as they wish, but probably not respecting many of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So I just want to reflect. I want to reflect with you, and this is why, for me, perspectives is really interesting. No, I would like that we start looking at other flags. I'm somehow very tired of those national flags that are being, that they are also dear too, and maybe we need to start thinking of other flags that we could think of, or no flags, I don't know. Anyway, welcome to Perspectives, Urbanisms of Diversity. We want to look at the fabrication of the city, which is what we actually do here at the faculty, from other points of view. And this is why we have today Roberto Rocco. He is the leader of the diversity group at the faculty, and Caroline Newton. She will be together with Roberto moderating the panel. I want to thank you, Alexander, Rosé, Johan, Sofia, and Bettina for joining us. They will be properly introduced in a minute. I just want to say thank you very much. I will give the word now to Roberto. He, together with Caroline, will lead the panel, and I hope we have a nice conversation tonight. Thank you very much. Roberto, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Oop. Should I go? Maybe I have to stay here, sorry, because of the microphone. Thanks, everyone, for being here tonight. And thanks, Javier, Ifra, and all the team of people who put this together. We are here to talk about different perspectives in urbanism and architecture. And let's wait for my slide. And if I have to summarize what we want to discuss today, it's called epistemic diversity. And what is epistemic diversity? It's having more voices and more perspectives and more people, actually, different people producing knowledge, and having different perspectives on what knowledge is, even. We do have a little bit of a problem about single perspective. In this building, I would say, but at the university at large, and in knowledge production at large. I found this super interesting article saying why architect Le Corbusier wanted to demolish downtown Paris. And I think this headline really tells us about the, the lack of vision that this single perspective gives us. The way to look at the world as if you have all the answers to all the problems. Of course, this, if you are not familiar, this is what Le Corbusier wanted to implement in Paris, like La Ville Radieuse, which is super beautiful idea that would have destroyed one of the most beautiful cities in the world. But although that was not realized, other things around the world were realized with this single perspective of modernism. I don't want to, blackmouth modernism. We really are very thankful for a lot of things that happened because of modernism, but we need to be very, very critical about this single perspective, I would say. Next one. We know that Western knowledge is understood as hegemonic, universal, so everything is between brackets here, right? Neutral, and defines what's valid knowledge according to one set of values. And we really need to go forward. I got these photographs from a list of most famous TU Delft students. So these are former students from the TU Delft from various faculties. And here you see that there is a problem of a single perspective, a male, white, Western-dominated perspective. But it's a little bit more than that. These people, they are from a certain kind of person. They belong to a certain social class, and they see the world in a certain way. There is, for example, one president of Shell here. There are several Nobel Prize winners here. There's nothing wrong with them. They are wonderful people. They did a lot, but they are one type of person, right? And they have a very specific type, I would say. Next. So, epistemic diversity is about other ways of knowing, other knowers, other people who know, multiple producers of knowledge, and tacit and traditional knowledge. And I use traditional very unwillingly, because when I say traditional, it already puts it down. It already makes it less important. Next one. So epistemic diversity is the recognition that people are not empty vessels where good knowledge needs to be poured by the knowledgeable. For Paulo Freire, a Brazilian philosopher of education, people are active agents of their own knowledge, and that knowledge must be articulated in a process of critical, investigative self-awakening. But a nagging question also comes: how do we bring all this together again so that we escape the ghost of absolute relativism? So we need to have different knowledges, but how do we bring everything together again? Doreen Massey said, urban space is the space of radical simultaneity, where we must decide how are we going to live together. So we want to have different knowledges. How can we put everything together again so we can live together as well? So I'm super grateful that we have a wonderful panel of people who do and are expressions of these different ways of knowing. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the debate today. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Javier. Thank you, Roberto, for this introduction. It's really great how you have now clearly set the scene. I think that is very helpful for us in the panel and everyone on the beautiful orange stairs. So let me explain what we will do. We will start with, of course, introducing all the speakers. And we have prepared a couple of questions to guide the discussion, but then afterwards we will also open the floor from questions and comments from you, of course. So we have asked all the speakers to bring an image or a video clip, and to use that image or video clip to, first of all, introduce themselves, but also explain how they are related to the topic of today. So I'm not going to introduce everyone individually. I always think people can do that much better themselves. So I first want to give the floor to Roser.
Thank you to invite us. I'm very happy to be here. I'm Roser Casanovas. I'm an architect and an urban planner. And I am one of the founding members of Col·lectiu.sis, based in Barcelona. We are a not-profit cooperative of architects, sociologists, and urban planners of different origins with 17 years of local, national, and international experience. We work to rethink the domestic, community, and public spaces so they promote social diversity without discrimination and hierarchies. We approach the different projects from an intersectional feminist perspective through community participation and promoting sustainability and the solidarity and feminist economy. We started working together in 2005 in response to the Catalan neighborhood law enacted by the Catalan regional government in 2004, whose point seeks mandated cities to promote gender equality in the use of public spaces and facilities. And no one knows how to do it in this point. The main interest of the group is urban planning from a gender perspective as means of eliminating gender discrimination and ensuring the right to the city for all. Our work is concerned with how built environments can reflect and respond to the diversity of human societies by creating inclusive spaces. It's been a few years since we decided to take a political stance and to call things by their proper name. What we do is feminist urban planning, and it's not common sense. It is to make visible that it had been the feminists from social movements and the academia who have worked to put people's lives at the center of urban decisions and not capital. And also those who have made it clear what women and the great experts of our towns and cities, because we continue to be the majority of those who sustain the lives of many, many people. Our image represents our way of working to include a gender perspective in urban planning. We use collective and bottom-up participatory processes centered in analyzing everyday lives with an intersectional approach, as I said. We developed many tools over these years to support the processes for women empowerment and urban transformation. The goal is to make different experiences visible by creating environments that respond to diverse needs and realities and promote safety and autonomy to use and share them. It also represents the capacity of people to transform their environments and make them more livable for everyone. We have to think it together. Thank you. This is my presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much. You said some very interesting points that I just want to highlight already, because I think it's worth seeing how we can take them into the discussion later on, because it's really stressing that there's a lot of things that are invisible that need to be made visible, and that you start from this sort of feminist perspective and looking at what women have been doing and mean, and sort of seeing how they have sustained the life of many, which I think is really very valuable. And you already mentioned this kind of intersectional perspective, and I think the feminist movement was really important to take these first steps, and I'm really happy to see that today we can expand beyond that. And I think with that I want to go to Alexander, because I think you have, through your work, exactly done that.
Hi, I'm Alexander Auris. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy. I'm a Peruvian architect. I moved to Belgium 4 years ago to follow my education, and I started working since then. My current project or my current research focuses on queer spaces. When I decided to come to Belgium for my, no one made me migrate. I decided to migrate. And because it was a very conscious decision, I also decided that in the future, every project or every academic or professional project I would start had to be something that I really care, or something I can give to the world from my own experience. Then I realized, or I asked myself, what do I know? And it was, I know what is to be a queer person from Peru, let's say. So I decided to start researching that intersection between queerness and my education, which is like a spatial practice. And I developed a project called Queer Commons or Queer World, which proposes a methodology to analyze queerness in urban spaces. This project, I call it an embodied research because it comes from my I put my experience and my intersectionality to actually analyze what do we really share, queer people, in the world. It started to, the project is called Queer Commons because the goal was to find out these commons beyond the physical space that queer people share around the world, because queerness is a human condition and not a physical as a condition of a city, for example. And therefore I started to, because I was not trying to analyze physical spaces, I started to research on experiences, because actually, for example, the first thing queer people share around the world is that we live in this heteronormative world. And we realize that we are different because we live in this world. So that experience is shared by queer people in Peru, maybe queer people in Belgium or in the Netherlands. And that experience happens in a space. That experience happens because of the representations of societies that we see specifically in a city. So this is the starting point for my research that I plan or I'm starting to develop in different cities. What else can I say? From my practice, I try to, sorry?
You want to show the video?
Sorry, yeah, I have a little video. If we can look at it, it's only 40 seconds. To give you the context of this trailer, is a trailer of a short movie I developed last year for the Oslo Triennale. And they asked me to do a short movie about my topic in Brussels. And for me, the most important, I came to Belgium 4 years ago to Europe, and I said, oh, okay, I'm in Europe. I can kiss my boyfriend at the bus stop. And actually, I couldn't. And I couldn't hold hands either in my neighborhood. And because people looked at us and there were some incidents before. But then when I moved to other neighborhoods in Brussels, then it was okay. So for me, the most shocking or interesting condition about the city was that the power of the space that is on us, on queer people or in other kind of people. And therefore, I decided to express that in the short movie I did. And I create, the movie is basically a walk from two neighborhoods, very different. And along the walk, which is 4.6 kilometers, which is the name of the movie, 5 different experiences of queer people appear. And what I try to express also is this kind of layered city, that something we see and something that happens, and it's about negotiation and etc. I hope I can explain a little bit more later because I think my time is done.
Okay, thank you very much, Alexander. And really nice that you end with this idea of indeed the layered city. It sort of connects back to this invisibility and needing to expose these invisible aspects. And also when you were talking about this kind of embodied experience, again, very, very relevant for today, I think. And with that, I want to go to Sophia, because I think you can shed more light on these embodied experiences.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to sit on this side of the orange seats. I am Sophia Holst. I call myself an architect and independent researcher, and I've seen that in the social media I've been pointed out as an artist and architect, which in a way makes sense because I have a background in fine arts. I studied fine arts, master and bachelor, but I also then after that worked for architects and also did my master's in architecture, which for me is now architecture and urban planning is more the fields in which I navigate and in which I want to, put out my perspectives and stories. So I do sometimes still have exhibitions, but they are always about the built environment or urban developments. And at the moment, I'm also trying to build up my own architecture practice, but also work on researches along hand, in which I really want to unravel somehow how in an urban development can you actually be inclusive and inclusive to diversity and especially focusing on peoples in the margins of our society that is often capitalist driven, which does not include necessarily always the complexities and diversities of people. And I have an image with me which I like to show right now. So I usually work from what I see around me, and it's nice that you said it, not everything is visible, which is very important to me, but I start always from things that are visible. And I also work sometimes with photographers, and this is an image by Axel de Marteau, but it was for the research called Forms of Public Privacy, which I was very intrigued by the spaces that are kind of leftovers from our society, kind of byproducts of design or spaces that are unprogrammed. And to come back to this embodied experience, for me it was kind of a revelation that these spaces actually are really, really important for people that are in need, that are really live on the margins of our society. And it's a very physical, embodied moment where you see, or the person who lives in this palace of justice, actually in Brussels, which is half decaying. I mean, it's Brussels, not Netherlands. What do I want to say? Yeah, so it's a physical experience, but I also, if I could have brought two images, I would have taken another one, which shows that these moments and these physical experience are not only existing in public space, they can also intervene into the private sphere, also as effects of urban planning. And recently I am working on a research that is about social housing and the immense operation to renovate these social housing. In Brussels I did that, but I'm also looking now in Netherlands, in Amsterdam and Rotterdam, where you see that there is a displacement strategy happening where many people who are so dependent on governmental and social services, the public decision-making of urban planning intervenes into their private sphere. So I wanted to point that out, that it's not only about a physical encounter in public space, but also yeah, and the more and more you come into a marginal, precarious situation in your life, the more and more these boundaries of private and public might interfere each other. And this is where my researches nowadays are about. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Sophia. I think if you look at the image and you look a bit longer, it's actually indeed very confrontational, let's say, to understand this. Well, I was intrigued by the fact that you said it's leftovers. We often use in urban planning, you have leftover spaces or sort of, and see them as opportunities, but the fact that you call them leftovers, and with this image, it sort of really points to also what you said about the margins and how do you acknowledge their presence and the importance of including that in an urban practice. And so we have now sort of moved from the feminism to queerness as important elements, to thinking about the margins. And so Bettina, that brings me to you, because I think you can even expand further on this idea of embodied experiences as an important way of knowledge production, again from a very different, or not very different, but a different perspective. Is the mic on?
Is it on now?
Yes.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for coming. I understand there's a big competitor outside, which is a pub in the open air. So if you didn't know that, forget about it again. So maybe you can already put on the image, actually. Thank you. So I'm going to talk about this image in a moment, but the image is also kind of me, because although I'm here today mainly as a cultural geographer, I started originally as a biologist. I'm the child of an expat military person, so I have already a kind of a childhood of a lot of traveling and travelers. But I think the way in which I developed as a researcher is also important in that it sounds like I was disorganized, but I switched a lot. So I did biology first in Germany, and then I took geography and education. And then I moved to the UK, where it turned out I had more study credits in geography, so I got my degree not in biology, but in geography. And then I decided to do my PhD, and in order to find a topic, I traveled through Eastern Germany and asked people, what is important to you here now? And this was just after unification. And then I switched to gender studies, because it turned out that the problem that people experienced most was the gender differentiated marginalization after unification, because people lost their jobs and lost their kind of meaning almost. So it was then also when I started thinking about gender as it's mostly about women, but actually what about the men? And we will hear more about masculinities later, but I looked a bit more in masculinities, and my first big research project was about that. It was about masculine identities in prisons. So now you can see why I think this represents me a little bit. This all over the placeness, but still it's making sense within the person. Because I think what it did was it generated a sort of curiosity about the world, but also an understanding that there is not just one answer, and you need to figure out from different perspectives, or you need collaborators. And these collaborators you can find also in different levels and different places. And so if we fast forward to now, I am a cultural geographer, but I'm also academic director in a liberal arts and sciences program, which is great because these are our students as well. And in the past years, I have become more interested in thinking about creative methodologies to engage with people who are normally invisible or kind of, actually really unseen in the city. And then thinking about, but how can we make them visible? Because it's not always straightforward that you can apply the methods that you learn, and it could be survey, research, or interviews, because sometimes I find that, for instance, when people have disabilities, as in this picture, you may not be able to communicate verbally because people communicate via voice, what's it called, speech computers, using eye tracking. And so what I also learned then is you really have to slow down. And now I think research often has to take place really quickly because of, for instance, pressure of publishing and career development. But if you want to attend to marginalized groups, you have to slow down a lot. Slow down in the methods that you apply, slow down in your own understandings of the other, and you have to do a lot of listening. And so in the past years, we've started working in teams of university students, art students, and people who are clients at a place called Noorderbrug, which provides care and housing for people with acquired brain injuries. And we made these teams co-researchers, and the idea was to explore inclusion and exclusion in urban spaces together. But they were in electric wheelchairs a lot and often unable to communicate verbally well or at all. And so the challenge is how? So how do you go out and explore these spaces? And we started with people who felt very much kind of like we are now, like super far apart. And, but through carrying out activities and documenting them visually, so we worked a lot with photography, what they've found out was actually we have a lot in common. So what we need to do is we need to slow down, we have to listen, we have to be open to the other's perspective. And so what started as 3 different people in the end became a composite of one person, because we don't know exactly when you are the other and when you are similar. And with the students, we always did exhibitions, and in the exhibition, this actually also contains mirrors, and it's a lot smaller, so it's about your size, and if you were to stand in front of this, you also become a part of that person. And so we hope to engage the audience by making them think about, why is there a mirror here, and what do I have to do with this other? And so it might make you think about, and this question to you, when did you see a wheelchair today in town? Anyone? Yeah, I think one person. Did you speak to the person in the wheelchair? Are you friends with someone in a wheelchair? So it's quite a challenge to uncover. So yeah, I think this is going to be pretty much what I'm hoping to contribute today.
Okay, thank you very much, Bettina.
Thank
that
you.
was really, again, super nice. I think for us as being part of this faculty where we know that visuals are important and that you can do a lot with it, you sort of opened up or sort of invited us in a way to really look at also using that to bring other voices to the discussion. And we can use our visual knowledge and knowing how to use these visual tools. So I think that is really, really nice. Also pointing out that we do have a lot in common, although we should be open for these different perspectives. Never forget that we do have shared concerns and shared values and so on. And so it was a nice sort of round already, looking at these different perspectives, at different kind of otherness. We would almost forget that there are men as well, and that there are also thinking about, even within these masculinities, there are differences. So Yona, please, I would like to give the floor to you.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's amazing to be back home, actually, because I graduated here from the master, and with a topic focusing on diversity and inclusion from the perspective of masculinities. So I think we can jump to the image. This is the image that I used to kind of explain what I did in my graduation year, and it's about this nuances, this very small nuances between masculine behavior. It touches a lot of different topics, and these 2 movies I chose to show because they, in my opinion, they highlight very well which type of masculine behavior is accepted or is kind of the norm. It's what Alex also discussed about heteronormative, and a type of masculine behavior that is not accepted at all, and that a lot of people are trying to stop you kind of expressing that type of identity. So we see that on the one image we see Greece. I don't know if you're familiar with the movies, but in the one there's the left one, for me left, yeah, for you as well. Left image is Greece, where Danny is kind of bragging about his summer love, but he doesn't actually want to express that he really loves the girl, and he has kind of intimate feelings for her, so he just tries to be dominant and confident, and which is supported by his friends and by society. And the other image expresses a much more vulnerable masculine identity of a boy that loves to do ballet, but his father and his brother are strictly against this wish, and you even see the girls behind. Whoa, what is this boy doing here? This is a girl sport, and I think what these two images explain is that there is some kind of perspective that is dominant and it's accepted, but by kind of making one perspective dominant, it creates a very harmful situation for both of them. Danny doesn't feel safe enough, doesn't feel secure enough to express his love. He's kind of forced to, that's what my opinion, he's forced to act in this way. And on the other hand, a person who loves to do, in this case, ballet, is not supported to express in the way it is. So I think that's my link to the topic. That this is kind of the starting point of my thesis, and I kind of I translated to urban spaces because I graduated here, so it's from the urbanism department. And this is what I bring, what I would like to bring to the table. This very nuances is that within, also in design and in research, is you kind of you get to know the difference, and you have to kind of feel very sensitive for this difference, because then you can understand. Kind of start to understand where it's really about, because otherwise I loved the images you showed before. They were all white men, and now I'm here talking about the white man, so everybody at home thinking, this is now going to be a white man talking about diversity. I'm curious. And now with these different images, you see that there's nuances within, and that by kind of incorporating diversity, it creates, in my sense, a great quality. So I plead to incorporate it.
Thank you very much, Jona. I think you highlighted a really super important point with some of the things that you said about this creating this kind of normality. That it creates situations that are not beneficial for no one. If you're feeling like the one that is sort of out of place, or if you think that you're the dominant one, no one gains from this kind of normativity ideas. And it sort of links to what you said, Bettina, that we do have a lot in common, and I think that is precisely one of the things that we have in common. We are not served by this using normativity as or sort of having just one perspective, let's say, to put it in the context of the evening. We are, as a society, we're not going to grow from just using one perspective. We need all these different kinds of perspectives and experiences to grow and to become a better society and to create a better future for everyone. So. And I want to explore a bit further of why this is so important from the creating knowledge and perspective. It was already highlighted by I think all of you before. But so as a follow-up question, I would really like to ask you to explain a bit further of why you think this kind of embodied experience is so important when it comes to knowledge production. And I would like to start with you, Sophia.
For me, I wanted to think first, what does it mean, this embodied experience? And I think when I do research or when I design, for me personally, it's very important to understand that big decisions and urban changes are also affecting people that are often other than me. So for me, it's really about the other. And not so much about my own experience. And I think when you design something and you have that in mind, for me it's important to kind of show the changes that are happening through the designs that you make. I mean, for me, my projects are usually a kind of pointing out what it can do for other people in a way. So in a way, it's I see them a bit as maybe as an artist you would say, I make a work and I say something with that work. For me, that's an architecture project or an urban development plan. For me, should do the same. And yeah, maybe I want to give the word a bit further, maybe to somebody else, because the embodied experience, for me, it is a bit more pulled back than the physical one when I think about my own work. So maybe I should give it to somebody.
But I think in everything you say and everything you do, what you feel and how you see the world is also very important, right? I mean, it is about the other, but I just wanted to highlight something that Alex said. He said, well, what is it that is in me that I can give to the world? And that is something that I really struggle to tell the students, please don't look at star architects as your role model. What is in you that you can give to the world?
I mean, for me, it's important to have a kind of subtlety when you work on architecture or architectural shapes and forms. And in a way, thinking of diversity of people is also thinking of diversity of space. So it's different typologies of space. It shouldn't be all similar. Also, when you look at, linking to my own image with these niche spaces, these kind of unprogrammed spaces, they exist outside of a kind of capitalist or even sometimes social control by people that maybe might have this normative behavior as an ideal. So the different typologies of spaces should kind of exist as well. And I think there it should be, you should, as a designer or a researcher, have a kind of subtlety to these differences. I think that's maybe what I bring to it personally.
Bettina, you want to comment?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Just because you mentioned normative experiences, I thought it might be a good one for me to link to. And I don't know to what extent embodied experience is part of the program, but usually in my background, when we teach about embodiment, we kind of visualize it as that there's an actual a body. So we're thinking about the reach of the body, and first is what you are, kind of what is on you and what is visible. But then there's other reaches that includes sensory experiences. And I think in terms of understanding the city, these are often important as well. And then to give an example, the relationship between the body, like when you're pregnant, obviously the way in which you move through the city, or maybe not for everyone obviously, but for me it certainly was very obviously, you just take different spaces. You can't be like literally in place in the same way. So it means also that you start to understand the city in a different way. But in terms of the other reaches, the sensory reaches, this could be like tactile, like you falling over something, curbs because you can't see them, or sensitivities to smell, which people might recognize who have been pregnant, which means that you can't use your normal routes anymore because they stink. So this is like thinking about how does this actually then translate to places that you feel safe or welcome, and what is the relationship maybe between the people who create cities and those who use cities. And then in my research, when we try to work with people who are marginalized, or in the case of people with disabilities, we try to help our students think about the implications of having different bodies by making them co-experience. And that's really difficult, because obviously if you're able-bodied, you often don't even see the same things that others experience. So we often do a sensory change lab, which means we take away some of the senses, not really drastically, but kind of just by taping fingers together, or somehow inhibiting them from walking, so that they get a sense of, oh yeah, when I walk to the Albert Heijn with peas in my shoes, it really is horrible. So now I can understand maybe better what someone would feel like if they had to walk more than 500 meters, which is in planning terms, I think, the good radius from older people's houses to the supermarket. But you cannot imagine this or think about changing the city if you don't have an understanding of what it feels like. And some of the methods that we then use is, for instance, walk-along interviews, so that you can be in the same place as a person who is experiencing something. And then the body is important, not just because it trips over curbs, but also because it's seen by others. And it's important for the able-bodied researcher to be part of that experience, because you can see with the wheelchairs, for instance, when we go with people in the wheelchairs, that passers-by don't address the person in the wheelchair, they address us about the person in the wheelchair.
Can I ask, or maybe go further on this topic of feeling safe? Because I find it personally always a very difficult topic, especially, I mean, I showed the image of a kind of quiet, dusty, dirty back space with no social control, and I argued that it has a value, that it exists, and many people would say other people might not feel safe there. So sometimes I'm wondering if all spaces should be for everybody. Is that not a bit of a myth?
I think the city is a negotiation. Every space in the city is about negotiation. For example, in the short movie, I show the Royal Park in Brussels, which during the day is used by people that run, in the afternoon, families and kids, and then young people after work drinking, and during the night, it becomes a cruising space, which means men having sex with other men. So for me, I see every space in the city as this kind of negotiation, and as designers, as architects and urban planners, I think we have to give the frame to many kind of performances to happen in the spaces. I don't say that every space should be a cruising space, of course, but I think it should allow different kind of bodies to be able to use it. And I wanted to talk about this idea of the embodiment and how I see it, because I believe in the right of a body to be present in public space, but also in private space, in institutional spaces, in education, in spaces of universities, for example. And I believe that it's not only about a temporary presence like the one we are having right now, for example, or an international student that comes to study 2 years and then goes like a passenger in an institution. I believe in the right of the body to be present in every level, to make not only a temporary change or this idea of diversity, but actually to create a systemic change in society and institutions. And that is, for me, very important, and I'm a encourager of this kind of thought, and but also at the same time, like this relation between space and body. Space puts exercises power in our body. Right now, I'm maybe acting and talking in this way because I am right here, right now. in another space, I might be different, you know. There is a change in my body that comes with a space that I inhabit. And I really wanna, in my work, I'm working now with queer performers, and I try to exchange that power relation and actually how the body can change spaces. In specifically with queer people, I'm working on this idea of how can we queer spaces through the performance of queer bodies. Yeah.
Great. That's just great, Alexander. It's you say several things that are really important for us to take away, and I wonder when you say I'm trying to see how body can sort of also have impact on these spaces. I just want to ask you, Rosa, because you're looking at a feminist urbanism, if I can say that, do you think something like that is possible?
I agree with all them because all our layers of looking and making visible what is happening, what might happen in the built environment. I wanted to read my notes before because I am not feel comfortable with my English, so sorry for that.
It's fine.
But I only wanted to answer the question why, because I think we need to rebuild our world, and we need utopias to follow. And I am not afraid of saying the word utopia because I think that it's a kind of motor, like a kind of way to say that we follow an idea. We follow an idea, and we think we can. We need to have this idea of what we are thinking about, on this diversity of these things we are talking about. And I was very interested also in what Sophia told about the private and the public and the boundaries, because with our perspective, we think that we have to change these boundaries and make it more communal or community boundaries, to thinking not in this binary way of the world, like in private or in public, because this is what we think, this is what we criticize. Sorry, I am not following my notes.
That's fine, that's fine.
Sorry. But it is one of the biggest issues that we criticize, with this perspective, the construction of the gender, female gender and male gender, between and close to the public and private spaces. So for us, it's very important to break this binary between female and male and public and private, because we are still closing our care tasks in the private and intimate places. So we have to co-responsibilize, social co-responsibilize of these caring tasks of our society, of ourselves, or of the others and our environment. So we need to think in another way, in other spaces, because capitalism make sure to build this big boundary between the private and the public, and not let these taskers and these private things, in commas, being a social issue, and also when we talk about, you say, the bodies, how we feel. I want only to make a point of our principal axis of work, to summarize what we work, or we focus our work. First of all, is changing these priorities by putting life at the center of urban decisions. That means making visible all the every life issues, no, all the every life activities that we need to do the people to live, no, and nowadays is not equally divided, no, that it's the responsibility, or in the worst cases we don't have all the spheres, no, we don't have and if we talk in the case of women, no, we don't have a community space or time, no, to develop, or in majority, talking in generally, or either in a personal sphere, no. So we have to put it all these spheres at the same place, and make it visible the reproductive and their care tasks, no? To think about in this co-responsibility social utopia, no? I think it's an utopia now. Sorry, one, but in the other way, making safe spaces and cities for everyone free of gender violence. We think that this is a very, very important issue that we work, no? This different perception of the safety in cities, no, that we have, because women are socialized with our body and with all this back of the role of the female taking care and blah, 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 no, and all this. We feel different, and we feel that there is not our place. So this is very important for us to make places that women can explain these different feelings, no, and also to work with the space to how we can handle this and to change and make it in another way. And, sorry, you can.
That's perfectly fine.
Perfectly. I just wanted to highlight something that you said and that I find in the speeches of all of you, is how capitalism disciplines us and makes all these differences between private and public, about male and female, and about ways, for example, of doing research, right? How we have to publish, we have to be efficient, we have to be productive, and so on. And it is really difficult to challenge that, I think.
Yeah, but and that is what sort of triggered me in several things that you said, and Alex, you said it very clearly. We have the right of the body to be present in these different spaces, but that's also the case for women. When women take their kids to work because they need to still do breastfeeding and so on, it's a big debate, discussion, but maybe we should do just as you said, just claim the space and be there, take the right to be in the space, just like people in the margins, they are really forced to take these spaces. So I think that's a very interesting way of approaching it. Personally, I like this kind of taking a big stance.
Action.
Action, yes. And once you're there with your body in space, you know, you're no longer or you can sort of try not to be invisible, because sometimes, like Bettina, what you pointed out, people are invisible because they're in a wheelchair and so on.
But some people want to be invisible as well.
Yeah.
I'm working with trans people, and she's a dancer, and she has workshops about how to become a ninja, which means how to disappear in the city, because she doesn't want to be seen in the city when she's walking because she's afraid. So I think, of course, I have this, let's take the space, you know, and let's be present, and it's all right. But at the same time, that I speak from my experience as a gay man who might not look like a very flamboyant or very extravagant person in the streets. And also because I'm Latin American, it's like I am not, well, you know, I am not so dangerous as some other communities, and I am not like a Belgian. So I'm like in this weird between that I can judge everyone and be in the middle because no one really comes for me. So I really pass, and I'm very invisible, I feel. But yeah, there is some people who actually look for that, you know, and I think it's the most vulnerable people and the people that we have to take care of the most as, not only as architects, but as citizens. So.
Yeah, I think that sort of links to your question, can we carve out spaces only for certain groups or where we feel safe? I think, Yona, that is something you try to explore in your work as well. Where are the spaces of encounter, and where are the kind of spaces that you that are sort of more protected in a broad sense?
Yeah, I was triggered by the question of Sophia. Do we need this private space? And you also mentioned that we have to break down this binary private space. And then I was thinking, I think for everybody, it's important to have a space where you feel safe, to feel safe to express in the way you like, and a private space is part of it. It can be maybe that's the only space that's kind of where you can actually express yourself in a type. Also, what Alex said is in one space I'm like this, and in another space I'm like that. So I think this presence of a private space, and I totally agree that we should soften this binary between public and private, but I think there is a value in private, intimate spaces to kind of create stronger connections in small, intimate communities. And on the other end, we have, of course, the public space, which is very important that we kind of create legitimacy, visibility of diversities, because otherwise we have this kind of the hegemonic normative, the norm that is expressing, which kind of also, that's kind of the other one, is that kind of they pushes this intimate expressions into the private space, and that's what we would not like to have. But I think that private space has its value, but we also should kind of create legitimacy, visibility in the public space of a full range of diverse perspectives and appropriations of space.
Yeah,
and that's what I try to...
Nice. Rosa, you want to comment?
Yes. I think there is a difference between an intimity space, and the private space. No, it's a big difference, and point that no everybody can have it. No everybody can have an own intimity space. No, especially women. Especially in our housing, or in our, also not in private spaces or in public spaces. No, so answering on also the question if all the spaces have to be for everyone. No, I think I don't have a magical result. No, but. We have to think in everyone to have one space, no? And think if who needs to have nowadays also, no, yet, or, well, in these times, have a known space, no? I think, I mean, women still need safe places, no? Women and not-binary identities, and more or intersectionally, we can find oppressed in our society. So we have to. I think, I don't know if something of my way of saying the words or something, but it's different. No, we have to define what it's private and public, no, and what
the private and the public, and then the sort of the safe space, or this intimate space, as you call it, because not all private spaces are safe spaces, or the spaces where this can happen. I also want to elaborate a bit on something else, like it came up that okay, the body, when it's in the public, in the open, it's seen by others. Sometimes not, it's invisible. But sometimes you also mentioned we feel like it's not our place to be. And Bettina, I just want to ask you, from your experience also in the project that you did, how did this come up as a topic? Also, was there sometimes also this feeling of maybe it's not our place because we're different, abled, or our bodies are different, and so on?
You mean? I never know. Yeah, I'm audible.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you rephrase the question?
In the project that you did with the students, that this feeling of maybe this is not our place. You ask, well, do you know someone in a wheelchair? Did you talk to the people? And often people are sort of they become invisible. But is there also this idea of maybe this is not our place? Like what I think, Sophia, you mentioned it, that some people in the margins maybe feel it's not our place. Or like what Alex said, I prefer to be invisible maybe sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And you mean for the students or the people with the disabilities that we work with?
For the people that you worked with, but also how did students sort of work with this realization maybe?
So the nice thing about working with the students is that sometimes they are a little bit unburdened of things that we tend to think about a lot. And so I think that they are a little bit more open. I don't want to generalize, but if I compare it to some more senior researchers, they are venturing a little bit more into the unknown. It's more like it's better to apologize afterwards than ask for permission before. And then really interesting things happen. So I'm sure that they often, or that they sometimes have had thoughts about, well, for instance, sometimes things can very quickly become very personal. So for instance, when we're out with people in the wheelchairs in the city, we always have to meticulously think about when does someone have to go pee. Because it will require some sort of assistance / awkwardness. And is that okay or not? And so that is often something that the students have to explore. So do we have to time when you know that you have to go to the toilet next and then we have to be back again in your house? Or do we bring something that will allow you to pee? Like sometimes they have a catheter and then it kind of goes into a bag and then you just have to change it. Is that okay or not? So you have to talk about things that you don't often talk about with people like that you don't know very well at all when you go into town. And so that might be an example of should I be here now? And so what we try to do is to make it a kind of a topic of not discussion, but exploration, because it's also difficult to decide for someone else. So it's trying to find this balance between being offensive, but not even allowing someone to express their opinions. And so we do have these situations where it's thinking about, yes, like literally, should I be here, or should I ask this, or can we go there? And I think on the other side, with the people with the disabilities, I think it maybe kind of works the other way around almost. We venture in a lot of places that they sometimes don't go, especially without a caretaker. And then it brings about a lot of realizations that they hadn't had before about being marginalized. So then it's maybe the question, not for them, should I be here, but should we bring them there? So it's all a bit of outside of people's comfort zones, and so you need a lot of support also from professionals. You need some kind of training, and how can we talk about these things, or how, if someone really then kind of felt okay living in an institution and then working with students, and then they're oh my God, this whole world that I can't really access. Then what do you do?
That's funny that you talk about deciding for people, right, and how awkward that can be. But as designers and architects, they're called to decide on a lot. for people. So I think, I think we should think more about that, how awkward it is that we are deciding designs for people who are different from us.
Yeah, and also I think it's a very sort of strong example of actually how little we think of us ourselves as being bodies that come with a lot of needs and sort of practical concerns. All of us, I think, especially as with designers, we do a lot of things in our head, and we think about like when we think about future worlds or utopias, a lot of things happen in our minds, but actually in the end we're all very, we're embodied creatures on a planet that is also very, very physical. So I think you raise a very important point that I think in education there should, that's my personal opinion, but there should be more attention for this fact that we're all embodied creatures with all different characteristics, and some of them are more visible. Some create this kind of, let's say, awkwardness, but very often it also shows the difference and the otherness that we need to try to incorporate, which it's easy to talk about it on an abstract level, but to really implement this sort of openness for difference in public space is something then completely different. And I sort of want to tease out more a bit, like, then how do we do that? How can we bring this understanding, for example, when we work in a faculty of architecture and design? You already gave some very interesting examples of how you research or how you implement this in the research and methods. And so I want to hear maybe some more ideas, or from the others as well. How do you do that? How do you research? Or what kind of methods and tools do you use to sort of show this or work with this these needs?
I think we architects produce or try to design spaces and produce plans, etc. But we also have to give space for people to say what they need. We have to listen, and we have to really create a conversation, and not only because there is an issue with appropriation of certain topics that don't. I wouldn't fight some fights because they are not my fights. I can support, but I will not represent a certain kind of community that I am not part or I haven't had experience of. I believe in decoloniality, I believe in social justice, I believe in anti-racism, but there are some fights that I cannot represent, even though I support them. So I think this idea of giving space for the people, for people to actually be in a specific space like we are having right now, I think that's the most important when we start creating this process where we want to include other voices, not just this very traditional raw or raw kind of research that we always do, or follow numbers and statistics. But I think there is another level of connection with people that we have to go through in order to, if we want to work with these topics. So for me, architects should not only create spaces as plans and drawings and etc., but actually give space to other people to participate in the process.
Can I react? Yeah, I completely agree. I've been so many times on kind of meetings about social housing where the housing corporations are present, the people from politics are present, architects are invited, urbanists are invited. I am invited because I'm representing some kind of social perspective, and it's given in a social housing tower in Brussels, and the people live right under us, and there's nobody present. I mean, it's just, sometimes I don't even use the word conversation, I just say talk to people. I mean, this divide is so big sometimes that the professionalization is so pushing us away from being human. In a way, we become an office, we become an institution, we become organs that cannot just talk to a person anymore, because we don't know how, we don't know who will do it, we don't know how to do it, and who's responsible for that. We can often it's thought, okay, we hire a company that does the social part. I mean, I really hate this, and I also said no to an offer like that I had to do the social part in a project, and I'm like, no, just okay. I understand not everybody can do everything, but I feel like, yeah, you need to step down from a throne somehow and be human and approach people and talk to people, and then you start to understand the huge complexities you're dealing with, which often is scary because then you don't know what to do anymore.
But you can do it together if you invite people around the table.
Exactly, yeah.
I thought you wanted to.
No.
Yeah, I can maybe give you some time to think and then talk in the meantime. So one thing that we also try to do, which I guess is coming more as a method from here than from geography, although geographers excel at borrowing methods from other disciplines, and that's design thinking. So I think for us that's a really interesting one, the social innovation cycle, where we can try and develop a way of involving people with checkback. So at the moment what we are doing is a project where we are trying to involve people with disabilities as co-researchers in researching in inclusion and exclusion, or accessibility in public spaces. And so I just gave a kind of brief impression of the possible problems that they might face, so we can't really go out interviewing people in shops or in municipalities. And we're trying to use technology, so in geography there's a few apps that you might know as well, Field Maps or Survey 123. And they seem to be, at first hand, quite interesting if someone is using eye tracking technology. So our thought was that they would be able to operate an app, and then they could go out independently and survey the city as co-researchers. Of course, it never works as you think. And so multiple weeks later, we are now in the stage of realizing that if someone is operating a cursor with buttons in the headrest, that you have to, you can't just think about a tool where you swipe with your finger, but you actually have to have a little bar that someone can then click on. And so we keep coming back with the app to the people to try them out in the field, and then we discuss with them what went well and what was a problem. So is the question clear, and can we get information about the space through this question? Is the app usable for you? So can you find the place and can you operate the app? And then we give it back to our geo service to refine it. And it looks like tomorrow we can use the actual app, and then we can roll it out to more users. But this is done very closely with the end user. And so I think this is a really, really good way that I'm not wrong, right? This method comes from here.
But how do you co-research? So can you tell us more about co-research? Because it comes with a lot of challenges, you're saying, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, so for me, co-research is a step further than participatory research. So participatory research, the research participants also have a say of part of how the research goes. So for instance, in my research, the walking interviews that I mentioned, they are participatory in the sense that the respondent can decide the route and the pace and the things that they show you. Or they could independently, for instance, collect data like pictures, and then you discuss it. As co-researcher, you give over more responsibility for the entire research process, which makes it very risky because you can't very well have a grant application with a predefined hypothesis and a process and milestones and an outcome, because I don't even know how to continue that sentence, because you just can't. And the co-researchers will think from their perspective, what is the important question? And then they will think about how can we focus on this important question? Which location should we go to? Which people should we involve? Should it be... So we are now using the app just to look at the built environment, but one thing they wanted to do is also to talk to the people in the shops. So do they make eye contact? And so that will be maybe the next step. You can really do it in the app so well. And then there's the analysis, which is another challenge, because when we analyze, we use theoretical concepts, which wouldn't necessarily be...
What?
Like, for instance, like embodiment. So if we had a data set and we would analyze what do we see as evidence in these narratives that show us what your embodied experiences are, well, we are not working with people who are doing a bachelor degree in cultural geography. We are, working with people who are fairly removed from even everyday life as we know it. So you have to find different ways to analyze. And so what are the concepts that make sense to you? And what do you see in these data? And how can we sort the data? And then the next thing is, who should know about this? And how can we tell the story? So I was just talking about the exhibition already. And with one group, for instance, they said, for planners, we really want for people to understand that we cannot use this route. So from the train station to my favorite football station, I cannot walk up the stairs because they didn't put a rail where I can hold on to. And so we worked with virtual reality and did a 360-degree kind of filming. And so that means you can provide a QR code to a planner in a municipality and they can buy for 10 euros at the HEMA, like some VR glasses. And then at least if they don't want to go out with the person with a disability, they can sit in there behind their desk with the map and see the route through the eyes of someone with a disability. And so you make a lot of these decisions together. And so it's a great big adventure that sometimes results in a paper.
I think that maybe it's a bit out of the topic of this conversation, but it's really a plea for, in academia also, to have room for this kind of research without maybe certain outcome, without a certain outcome. But I think it's truly necessary to have this kind of openness. That's a whole different debate. I think we can spend a lot of time discussing that or making a point for it. But as you said, you maybe let's hear if there are some other ways that you try to research this or implement.
What I had to think about is that if I can transfer back to the design practice, I think also the idea about what is an architect or a designer is. The idea, I think, is very active here in the faculty is that the architect knows, the architect knows how to do it. So the architect has this structure, it follows the structure, and then there's an amazing design, and then in the end you are a star architect. It's published in the Arc Daily and the Zine and all those magazines. But if you kind of relate it to the type of process that you kind of trying to identify and translate it to the design practice again is, if you start from the perspective that you don't know and kind of position yourself as an, in a way, insecure designer that kind of puts yourself on a lower level and kind of focuses, has an honest interest in your user, no matter if you're an architect or an urbanist or whatever researcher, then you're at the first step of getting somewhere on a new, kind of being on the first step of innovation, because then you enter a zone or an area that you're unfamiliar to. And then I think that's the first step of creating amazing new spaces if you kind of position yourself as the one that doesn't know. So fully in line with this kind of unstructured design process, don't know where to go. It's very explorative, driven by experiments, which also, what Roberto says, doesn't fit within the capitalist, we should make a profit type of perspective. But let's keep it at a position as a designer. Let's lower yourself and show your insecurity in a way. And I think
exactly.
that's also relates to other topics.
this will be an utopia, no? Do you imagine the career of architecture like this, no? Well, I can imagine nowadays, but the first ones that have to change the mind is how you teach this,
Yes.
how you acompañar, no? How you go through this, no? With the students, no? How you can be with them without teaching something, no? Without saying, I know everything, no? Because it's not the thing, no? It's, and I wanted to add also that I think that all our perspectives, no? Bring qualitative knowledge about the world, not quantitative, not the numbers of 10, 11 or whatever people using this place. We said we use in that way. We need that things in these hours that the others. We are not safe because this issue, this kind of and whatever. No? So we put in the qualitative knowledge in the appear, no, visible. Sorry, I'm going through the principle, and to consider the vital and personal experience in research. No, you said before. We always start in our methodology. I have to say that we are not in the academia, so I talk always like, oh wow, Bettina knows a lot how to. The phases of the research and the names of how you call it, but I talk from the action of making process or participatory process, no, knowing that we are not taking account of everything or everyone, but knowing that in each time we're going to have more voices account, no. And also because it's very difficult in our context, no? For different issues, then we're going to, sorry. But the thing I wanted to say is we always start with a personal experience. No? We think about what is my everyday life, what I need, what is my experience, and then go to the collective place, no? To say, this is the experience of all. No. The next one, the next me of no, my is explaining another experience that is not mine. No? So I think this is very important, no, to start. And you say
so before, you need to accept that the other is different from you.
That
yeah.
I really would like to jump into, because when I first read the kind of brief of this discussion, like I often have this kind of inner debate, like, okay, what if women want to feel safe in this and that street, but that street has all the places where Muslim people collect and men drink tea, and the women does not feel comfortable with that. I think there's a danger there that we might prefer that the woman feels safe, so the tea houses should not be there. But in a way, like, it comes back to what you said, like there should be a multiplicity of bodies and beings, and it is very dangerous that the one can be used against the other. And I see it already happening in Brussels, like where we have the Stalingrad land, like the space with all the bars, where I cannot call it bars, by the way, with the spaces where men drink tea houses, and it seems that now Ans Persoons, which is the schepenen, like the minister, wants to think a lot about women's rights and feminist perspectives. And she's pointing towards that street. And I find it very tricky, because it can also stigmatize a group that already has been stigmatized. I'm not saying that there might be openings for the Muslim community to learn more about queer community and female rights, etc. But I also think that different cultures have different ways of being, and it's maybe not the place of a white woman or to say that somebody else cannot live like that. So it's kind of tricky. These different diversities also might even clash with each other, and then you need to be really aware that the one cannot overrule the other. Yeah, somehow.
I think
Can I quickly jump in? I think what I also try to address in my thesis is that these clashes are very necessary, and because they're super uncomfortable and not feeling safe, but also what I said earlier about setting yourself as a designer in showing your insecurity, it kind of sets yourself outside of a boundary. And I think these clashes, they are part of this negotiation where Alexander also talked earlier about.
But I think these negotiations should be fair negotiations, and these different voices should have the same platform. And that doesn't always happen, I feel, but yeah.
But then I think it's the next question. Now, what are the difficulties you have to implement or to make these ideas or these issues to the land or to make it? No, we live in a patriarchal and capitalism society that government with a political that only see the middle time of their govern, no, and they use they use all of us to all of us. I mean the diversity of us, no, to be popular or to make it like, well, I'm doing something for, take it, no? I'm going to take, to click, no? And not to think about all, no? Or to make policies that are with a largest view, no?
Yeah. No, I think it's a very, very valid point. But it also also is a call to us, what is our role in all of this? And with this, I want to actually open the floor to you. What is the role of all of us? And I can imagine that you have some questions for the panel too. Yes, please. Can I ask you to come to this microphone too? Maybe you can briefly introduce yourself and then ask the question. Or make a comment.
Yes. Hello, thank you for coming, and thank you for the insights you gave us today. I am Jara Lambos, and I am a second year Master of Urbanism. So I'm right now doing my thesis. Well, it's not really connected to diversity, but I found it very interesting, the discussion today.
Why not?
Excuse me?
Why not?
Well, I have other interests at the moment, but, you know, it's always interesting.
I'm sure it's there.
Yeah. Well, possibly I will get to that at some point. Anyways, I wanted to ask you, well, I have things to say and things to ask. I'll try to be as brief as I can. First, I wanted to mention when we were discussing about the division between public and private, as well as the binary gender division, I think that there we are missing some very sincere opportunities in the in-between, in the places between private and public, and the opportunities that can come to the table when people from various gender thrive in the society. So I think that is a matter that we should always take into account, not only when designing, but also in our lives, in our society. And taking from that, I would say that when we are discussing about what we can do as urbanists, it's not always our responsibility, and we shouldn't carry the burden that by designing we can change everything. it's also social matters and social issues that we should address as society in general, beside our profession and our discipline. So I'm going to the question part. I wanted to ask first about the co-researching practices you're having. I understand that there are a lot of difficulties and a lot of challenges, and I'm wondering to what extent these different approaches are changing the epistemology of your research, and if these new scientific methods are actually considered as scientific or more of a social study, or I don't know how to explain that. And my second question would be for the people that come from practice. What is the difficulties that you face when you're trying to, well, we discussed a lot about research and how well we can address things and learn things through research, but when you're trying to implement these ideas in practice, what kind of conflicts do you find and what kind of challenges do you face? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll start with the co-researcher question. I guess you can sit down again, or you may stand as well, but this seems more comfortable. So you're asking about changing epistemology, but also about whether they're considered like proper methods, I guess. And I think that depends, if I go from back to front, it depends a little bit from which discipline you are speaking. And I am very fortunate that I work in a liberal arts and science institution where we are trying to actually address where these boundaries are, and do they exist, and are they useful boundaries, and when? Because sometimes it's necessary to have, I think, specific kind of knowledges to understand something, but sometimes it's good to be in the edges. And in my field, cultural geography, qualitative methods in general are an accepted way of doing research. So there's also a lot of journals that accept articles with a lot of quotes and very few respondents, that accept a lot of visual data, photo essays, even video links. And so in that sense, all of the data that we generate kind of fall into that category, because when we go out with our co-researchers, we still generate text, for instance, from the evaluations, and we still generate image or a video that then in the end, I guess, the power relation still determines that we make the decisions about what goes into the article, depending on the type of journal and whatever the template is that they provide. But there are also places where I think they would consider this Bettina's hobby projects and not like serious science, which is fine, I suppose. And about epistemology, yeah, it really, so for me, all of the projects I've done with marginalized people using these methods, but especially the project I'm working on now, it changes everything. So every time I'm learning something new about the world that I didn't think existed before, or didn't understand before, or didn't think I had questions about before, which means you also start to think about how can I know about this, and is my toolbox sufficient, or how can I find other ways to figure this out, and or who do I need? And so maybe I need this specialist from another discipline to assist me, which is happening also with the app development, because I can't program an app, and still we need it in order to unearth these experiences. This is kind of a little bit what you were hoping for.
Well, thank you for your answer, and I didn't put down the question as a I didn't really want to say that it's not scientific or epistemic enough. I actually believe that getting to experience situations, it's a way of actually learning, and whatever you learn, it becomes scientific at some point. That's I think that's how science is progressing, through our experiences.
Okay, thank you. And some reflections from practice. How do you implement? What's the hurdles?
I think I told before, but I think one of the most difficulties is time. No, it's our time, time of the people that don't have enough time, no? Time of the politicians that wanted everything for yesterday. And someone told before that you need time to listen, time for have I don't know, if we think in a public space, no? To study in the different seasons or to study in different hours of the day or with different kind of person who use it, no? So I think in a big, time can be one of the most difficulties we face. But related to this time, so why we don't have time is because our productive society makes us being as effective as you can, and you have to go to work to take care, to be prettier, to be tal, no, so the patriarchal and capitalism society is the biggest. But then also ourselves, because we also have to face our not to be incoherent in the days, no, or to you have in the days you have to live, you have to eat every day, and you have to work also. So there are different kinds of difficulties, no, of our way we organize. The way we are structured, no, like a society, but also ourselves, no, like how we strict and how we manage our values.
I also wanted to react on that.
Yes, but before you start, if I may, I was wondering, especially how easy is to implement the ideas. How easy do you find the ground to suggest and propose new things?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to react on, actually. I mean, like I said in the beginning, I'm building up my practice, which in fact is very difficult because the main issue is often that people don't agree with you. If I propose a bench where people can sleep at night, they won't want that. They want the bar in the middle so you cannot sleep there. So, I mean, it's also, yeah, who has the power position to decide what can happen? And there's a big problem often that people don't agree with you. And so that is maybe when you want to apply for open calls, you might not be selected if you're too honest. It's also this game you need to play, like with words and language. Like, am I gonna be honest with what I think, or should I kind of hide what I think so I'm chosen and I can actually secretly do what I want, you know?
That's like, what I do.
Yeah, so there are different ways of doing it. I often decide to be very honest, and then I don't get. And if I'm not honest, and I might get in the vision of politicians, I feel really bad because I have the feeling they think about me that I think differently, and I think the same as them. So it's a kind of it's politics, basically. And what else was it? Yeah, maybe let's keep it.
Okay, nice. Design is politics. I agree. We have another question there. Was that an answer to your question?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hi everyone. Thank you for the great BK talks. I written something and I want to ask. I want to focus on the outsider perspective when it comes to designing and researching a place where we do not come from or a part of. So as designers and researchers, we kind of start from scratch with our investigation for the start of a project. So for example, we as able bodies, researching about queer bodies or bodies with disabilities. And again, another example is with gender and ethnicity. it seems like those that look more Caucasian or coming from a more privileged side of the world somewhat lost their voices when it comes to the topic of diversity and inclusion, as right now there are a lot of heat between the binaries of being queer and not queer when it comes to ethnicity and gender. So my question is, how do you deal with this subtle nuance when you're exploring a topic or a community that you don't identify with? And how do you still retain your voices, meanwhile people that look like you are under bad repetition? So that is my question. Yes.
Okay, and a very, very challenging one.
Yeah, very. I love your question, and of course I don't have an answer. But the way I approach a project, for example, is not forgetting, but questioning every process that traditional process I've learned to do something in school. And I think the distance of not belonging, or even though I feel more comfortable nowadays in the city where I live, I think that distance actually gives me more freedom. And that's how I see myself not necessarily as a, well, I don't understand some people that want to be so local to start.
So what?
Local, like some offices that really want to have only projects around their, I don't know, their cities or in a certain language, etc. And they don't want to open so much into the world. I really don't understand that, and I see myself as, I come from Peru, I've been living in Belgium, and I have other experience in other places, and I really believe that more than a specific about, more of a person specifically about a space, I'm more specific about a time, in a way. I like to think, or I really enjoy architecture or practitioners that kind of are based in a time period nowadays, contemporary architecture, which means for me, having actually a thought on these social aspects that we are facing right now, like talking about racial issues all around the world or queerness. For me, that's very contemporary, and I think every institution is now realizing that it's something that they have to do, because if they don't, they're gonna disappear like dinosaurs in some years. And I think in that sense, I also put myself every time I work with some kind of institution or participate in a certain kind of project of, I know they're using me, but how can I use them too? And that's always my, well, I already confessed my secret. How am I using, or how can we use other institutions? And I just wanted to say, I don't know if maybe that's what you meant about these nuances of queerness, but I think we are all queer in the end. We just don't realize it. I mean, queer theory brings every sexual orientation, if we're talking about that, to the same level of variation. So every person has a different variation of sexuality, and that variation, actually, there's no judgment on that. So since we are all just variations, we are all kind of queer, and I believe that, but just people are not ready to talk about it, so yeah.
Yes.
So I've been thinking about what I think you're asking. So it's a little bit about entering the field and the legitimacy of being in the field as someone who's other than the people you are researching with. And because I actually have done that a lot, and I think that I start with genuine curiosity and interest, but also unfixedness. So I'm always interested in what is your question and what do you want from if, like, is there a project, for instance? Is it just not just me wanting to like get information and then helicopter out of the field again, but what's in it for you? And so this is, I think, about what was said earlier about not being the expert, but being the learner in every situation, and also being able to improvise and to accept that maybe this is not necessarily going to be the project that you had in mind because of your asking for what do you want. And so one example was I did a project with students in the downtown east side in Vancouver, and this was in the context of diversity and inclusion, and they were interested in an alternative school program with youth that were considered at risk, but our students were none of that. They are honors college students, so they're very privileged. They do credits on top of their program, and they are like literally very far removed. And so they started out just asking people if they would be interested in talking about their lives. And then as we went on, we realized that we were talking with students who are often unseen and unnamed and not cared about. So they sometimes even like literally disappear. So throughout this project, it became a project more of the people that we were studying, because we were thinking with them, so what can we do with your stories and who should know about them and what context can we give you? And in the end, it became a small book with lots of pictures and quotes, and we gave it back to the community. This wasn't how we started, and we weren't like them, but I think we did something good for all people involved, and maybe that sounds kind of weird. But yeah, so I think it's starting with a curiosity, but being open to asking, what do you want in this
Bettina,
project?
I wonder if it's not also about developing empathy for the other and to be genuinely curious about
but
others.
I think that it might not be enough even to empower other people's voices if they want to. And I think there, because I sometimes also feel very uncomfortable, like profiting of an image of somebody that is in need, and you know, it's a bit weird. But I think where I found a legitimacy that if I can somehow empower people's voices, like in terms of, for instance, the project I'm going to do with social housing, there are different protest organizations that want a platform to speak. And if I can tap into that and bring that out of them, and somehow I can also enforce their voice, that would be a win-win situation somehow in terms of like the value of that, what they are saying. And I think that's my goal, to what I care for, to give it a platform. And yeah, if that's through me, hopefully I can somehow add to that somehow.
Thank you, Sophia. We have time for one question.
Thank you so much for a very intriguing discussion. In fact, we had a question from online, and I also had this question pop in my mind. And it is from Don, who states, the research on the relationship between the well-being of people and qualities of the built environment only address groups of people with a common specific shared detail. So for instance, we're talking about very specific types of groups, rather than this kind of tension that Sophia brought up with regards to what are the priorities of feminists versus the priorities of, say, a Muslim minority. How can built environment be less focused and still provide joy for everyone?
Okay, wow.
How can we live together? That's the question.
That's because that is why we work, no? To find solutions for living together, no, and living together in equally ways, no, and not living like now, no, in inequalities with our environment. No? So, well, I think if someone wanted to.
I think the things we are doing is to give this platform for people to have fun and be themselves and be happy. I don't know, like maybe within our practice we could have more fun. I don't know. Maybe you have some ideas.
It's a very positive point to end with. So I want to close the session here with this very positive note, and I invite you all to, we said a lot, I think that you all said a lot of super interesting things, and we can take a lot away from that. So I invite you all individually to really think, what is the main takeaway for me from tonight? For me, it's definitely, we can be more vulnerable. We should do that, and that will help others to be empowered in space and to be able to take that space. Javier, I give
Yes.
the floor to you again.
Thank you very much to, well, Caroline and Roberto for organizing this, and for the panelists to contribute with their insight. I think that the conversation needs to go on. I think that diversity and inclusion is a very broad topic, and obviously we need to start here. We have somebody said something about systemic change. I think that this is one of the best places to start trying to do it. Educational space, and at all levels, not only at university, but we also need to educate at all levels to diversity and inclusion. Otherwise, I think that all those people with their flags will be there, but getting bigger and bigger. Let's not forget those people in the flags, with the flags, whenever we are discussing these issues. Anyway, I would like to simply say goodbye for now. In less than 2 weeks, on October 4th, that is a Tuesday, not a Thursday, we will be celebrating the Not in My Backyard BK Talks. And it has to do about citizen engagement in the circularity era. As I mentioned earlier, circularity is a topic that is very well and very nicely addressed at this faculty, for instance. But maybe citizenship, let's say what is so-called the general public, is not so familiar with what we talk about here. No? So we want to discuss how to actually mix better technology and science with what people are actually willing or wanting to do about climate change, fighting climate change, etc., etc. So please join us next week, and thank you very much. Thanks again. Bye.